she whispered. Just stay in the back, Dad, like I was an afterthought in her perfect photo. I nodded, smiled, and stepped aside. But when the mic turned on, the room heard the truth she tried to hide that night. Before watching the video, please tell us in the comments from where you are watching this video. The hall smelled like lemon polish and roses that weren't ours. I stood near the service door, a safe place for coats and fathers. Lindsay adjusted her veil by the window and wouldn't meet my eyes. Back by the tree line, she said softly. It photographs better. I almost joked that the tree line had raised her, but I swallowed it. The photographer nodded without looking at me, clicking through a list that didn't include a dad. Ethan paced nearby, fixing cuffs that didn't need fixing. His mother, Marilyn, hovered like a chandelier, deciding where to hang. We're keeping things clean, she told the planner. Minimal distractions. I was the distraction. Tyler, my friend, slipped in beside me in a suit that still looked like a shop rag. You good? He asked, voice low. I'm useful, I said. That's not the same, he replied. I watched the bridesmaids pose while the planner counted down. Lindsay smiled for strangers, with the kind of smile a daughter saves for a magazine. She finally turned my way, walked 3 steps, and touched my sleeve like it might stain. Dad, please, she whispered, eyes busy. Just stay in the back. It's a layout thing. Sure, I said. Layouts are important. My voice didn't crack because I'd practiced not letting it. Tyler squinted at me like a mechanic listening for a knock. You want out? He asked. No, I said. I want clear. The pianist started warming up with the song Lindsay loved when she was 10. It sounded thinner under chandeliers and rented light. I remembered the church basements we'd used for school plays, the paper stars I'd taped to walls, the applause that fit us. You gave her this room, Tyler said, reading my face. She wants the room to give her back something bigger, I said. Marilyn drifted close enough to be heard without being seen. Planner says the aisle works better without extra parents at the front, she murmured. Clean frame. I nodded like a man who respects frames. The vows will still fit, I said. She smiled with her teeth. Of course, if everyone knows their place. The planner called for family of the bride. The word skipped me like a stone skipping water. I stayed still because moving would make it worse. A junior usher handed me a program as if to compensate for my absence in the pictures. Big day, sir, he said, cheerful and unhurt. Big day, I agreed, accepting paper instead of a seat. Ethan drifted over and tried charm like a patch. We'll grab a photo at the reception, Mark, he said. Candid, more authentic. Authentic is good, I said. He didn't hear the wait. He patted my shoulder twice and returned to the center of the room. Lindsay posed under the arch, chin tilted, veil perfect, hands shaking only where no lens would find them. I am a teacher by training. I read tremors like handwriting. She was scared of looking small. That fear squeezed me harder than her whisper. Tyler bumped my arm. Walk, he said, pointing toward the back row where sunlight cut a clean stripe. We crossed the room like men with a purpose no one needed explained. You did right paying what you paid, he said. I paid for her not to worry about money, I said, not for me to vanish. He nodded. Back row has the best exits, he said, and the best view of who forgets you. I laughed once, short and useful. The planner rehearsed the recessional again, then checked her watch and clapped. Places, she called. Chairs creaked, voices softened, and the room began to believe its own lighting. Lindsay lifted her bouquet and inhaled like a diver. I took my seat 3 from the aisle, where the door and I could see each other. A child in a clip-on tie spun in circles and crashed into my knee. Sorry, mister, he said. You're good, I told him. Just learning turns. Tyler leaned and whispered, You going to say anything later? If they let me, I said. If they don't, he asked. Then I'll find another way, I said, steady as chalk on a board. The string trio slid into prelude. The guests leaned forward, as if leaning helped the music travel. I set my palms on my thighs and felt the fabric press back. I wasn't angry. Anger is loud and easy. I was something quieter and heavier that doesn't need witnesses. Lindsay looked over her shoulder once, a quick scan the camera wouldn't catch. She found me, registered relief, then replaced it with a practiced smile. I answered with a nod I'd used at every science fair, soccer bench, and tired midnight. I'm here. I'm not in the picture. I'm still your dad. The planner raised her hand. The doors opened to light. Guests stood. My daughter began her walk. I stayed in the back like she asked, but I counted beats like a conductor who knows the mic drawer is never really locked. I taught high school chemistry for 30 years and saved like a mule. When Lindsay got engaged, I showed her a simple ledger. One column listed savings, the other listed needs. I offered the venue deposit and a cap for vendors. She cried and hugged me hard. "I'll pay you back," she said. I told her weddings don't need refunds. They need clear ceilings. Tyler shook my hand and called me sir, which sounded borrowed. He said he'd handle the optics, a word that loves budgets, until bills arrive. I told him optics are for goggles. Numbers are for adults. He laughed, not hearing me. The first meeting with the planner felt normal and fair. I liked the contract because it had dates and penalties. I insisted. Payments go through a single account, so math stayed honest. The planner agreed and put me as payer of record. Lindsay nodded, relieved to see pages instead of drama. Marilyn arrived late with a tote full of bridal magazines. She said words like statement and legacy, then circled upgrades with a pen. The planner translated those circles into dollars without blinking. I reminded everyone we had a cap for a reason. Marilyn smiled like a hostess and said, "We'll find savings elsewhere." Savings elsewhere meant cutting things people actually use. She tried to reduce shuttle runs and raise floral towers. I pushed back once, calm and plain. "Guests need rides more than ladders," I said. Ethan half agreed, then pivoted when Marilyn raised an eyebrow. Lindsay went quiet and looked at me, torn between peace and math. I lowered my voice and kept it kind. "We'll fund comfort before spectacle," I said. The planner wrote comfort first on her tablet like it was a theme. Marilyn leaned toward Lindsay and whispered about aspiration. I pretended not to hear, but I did. The rehearsal dinner planning showed the first sharp edge. I offered to host something simple. Back room at a diner, pie for dessert. Marilyn proposed a rooftop with a violinist and a neon sign. Tyler liked the sign and posted a mock-up for votes. Lindsay texted me privately, asking if I minded smaller speeches. I told her speeches scaled to rooms, not rooms to speeches. Marilyn booked the rooftop anyway and promised to reimburse me later. Later is a calendar word that means never in this context. I paid the deposit because I wanted momentum, not friction. Tyler raised a toast during the tasting and thanked the Grants for generosity. I watched Lindsay squeeze his arm in warning, then watched him miss it. Photo decisions gave me the second edge, sharper than the first. The photographer asked for a shot list with must-haves. I put father-daughter first look on line 1. Lindsay nodded, then looked at Marilyn. Marilyn suggested, keep things streamlined and move that moment to reception. The photographer agreed because agreeing keeps invoices clean. I didn't argue. I just felt the gate closing quietly. Tyler told the photographer to focus on the Grant legacy wall. I learned that meant 6 framed portraits already packed in a crate. Lindsay glanced at me and mouthed, "Later, Dad." Later kept moving like a finish line on wheels. Money questions got softer and faster as dates approached. The planner sent tidy updates with totals I could track. Lindsay sent shorter texts with more hearts and fewer numbers. Marilyn sent none. She preferred to fly by decree. I asked Tyler once about splitting the band overage he'd requested. He said he'd talk to Mom and then change the subject. I learned to stop asking because asking wasted air. I paid deposits on time and kept receipts in a folder. I told myself I was buying stability for my kid. I didn't see I was also funding a room where I didn't belong. The week before the wedding, the seating chart arrived like a report card. I wasn't at the head table or near it. My name sat 2 tiers back next to vendors and cousins. Tyler said, "We did pods by conversation style." I said, "Conversation survives distance," and he laughed lightly. Lindsay texted me the same minute, promising we'd have a dance together. I answered with a thumbs up because that emoji is the grown-up bandage. Marilyn called to confirm logistics and ended by saying, "Fewer speakers keeps things elegant." I heard my speech quietly leave the building and decided not to chase it. Tyler sent a link for a custom neon sign arriving day of. The cost could have funded groceries for a month. The sign spelled their last name like a billboard selling air. At the rehearsal dinner, I paid the final check and got thanked with a group clap. Marilyn stood to introduce family, generously listing cousins, aunts, and a business partner. She named me as the backbone sponsor, like a brand on a banner. People laughed politely and clinked glasses. Tyler made a joke about my thrift and said, "Don't worry, Dad, we got the looks." Lindsay winced and squeezed his knee under the table. I ate my pie and listened to forks. Tyler's friends cheered the neon sign when it lit up. It hummed slightly, like a reminder that electricity isn't free. When the room emptied, the manager handed me the invoice with that tired hospitality smile. I tipped fairly, then stepped outside for air that didn't cost extra. On the drive home, I counted what mattered and what didn't. Vows mattered, safety mattered, paid vendors mattered, My seat didn't matter until someone named it for me. I realized the insult wasn't the back row, it was the rewrite of history. I had been downgraded from father to financier by people who liked clean frames. Frames are fine if they hold the picture. This one kept deleting me. I decided then I wouldn't argue at a podium or cry in a hallway. I would choose my moment and make it count. Teachers don't shout. We set the conditions and let lessons land. The church hall had that school assembly smell. Coffee, floor wax, and paper programs. The coordinator lined us up and spoke in a bright voice that treats adults like kids. "Parents of the bride here," she said, and her finger floated right past me. Marilyn glided forward and took the spot like she'd rehearsed it. Lindsay didn't correct anyone. She gave me a small nod that said, "Later," and looked away. I stepped back near the stack of folding chairs and watched people trade places like chess pieces. Ethan's groomsmen slapped backs and practiced jokes that would age badly by dessert. Tyler leaned on a pew and checked his hair in a dark window. I folded my program once, then again, and reminded myself that silence can be a tool. The first run-through started rough because everyone thinks walking looks easy. The coordinator stopped us twice for pace. 6 slow steps, pause, turn, she said, counting with her hand. Marilyn asked if she could float with Lindsay to the front for a dramatic handoff. The coordinator agreed quickly because people like agreeing with confidence. "Dad can follow a few rows back," Marilyn added, smiling at me like a hostess. Lindsay's eyes flashed for half a second, then went polite fast. Tyler caught the flash and missed the meaning. I raised my hand once and lowered it without speaking, because picking a fight in a church never ends with a lesson anyone keeps. The pianist played a clipped version of the processional. We all moved like furniture being pushed across a rug. During the break, the photographer started collecting must-have shots in a cheerful voice. "Bride with mom, bride with in-laws, bride with siblings," she called. She never said father of the bride, not once, and no one corrected her. When she asked for family, Marilyn reached for Ethan's arm and pulled their side forward like a parade. I watched Lindsay look at me, hesitate, then join them because momentum pulls harder than love on rehearsal days. Tyler's best man held up the neon sign to check height against the cross. "It'll photograph amazing," he said, ignoring the coordinator's frown. The pastor cleared his throat and asked for reverence near the altar. "It's just the rehearsal," the best man replied, and kept measuring. I felt older than my suit by 10 years and steadier than the room by 20. At the lectern, the coordinator reviewed who would speak at the dinner. "Toasts from best man and maid of honor," she said. "Short remarks from the groom's mother." She paused and then moved on. I stayed quiet long enough to feel the shape of that silence. Tyler leaned over and stage whispered, "We'll keep it tight, Mark. Vibes, not speeches." Lindsay tugged his sleeve like a small anchor trying to hold a boat. "Dad has something," she said soft. Marilyn smiled at both of us with her teeth again. "We may not have time, dear," she said. "We have a video montage." The coordinator brightened. "We love montages," she said. I pictured photos of lake trips and first apartment, and I wondered which ones had me quietly removed. The rehearsal dinner venue was 3 blocks away, all glass and views. The manager greeted us like we were a traveling show. He moved chairs to create flow that kept me near the door. The slideshow began before the soup reached the table. It was cut well and fast, heavy on college wins and their new condo. My wife's face appeared twice, both times cropped tight, both times without me. People clapped on the happy beats like trained dolphins. When plates cleared, Marilyn tapped a spoon and stood. "To new family," she said, holding her glass so light showed through it. She thanked everyone who made today possible, then listed cousins, aunts, and Ethan's boss. She closed with, "And a special thanks to our generous sponsor, Mark," like I was a banner over a field. I stood because sitting felt smaller than breath. The room turned, ready for something short and safe. "I'll be quick," I began. And then the manager stepped in, touching his watch like a stagehand. "Apologies," he said. "We're on a tight schedule." Marilyn smiled sadly at me and added, "We have to keep the energy up for the montage." Laughter moved across tables, thin and nervous. Lindsay stared down at her napkin and folded it into a square. Tyler said, "We'll get you at the reception, Dad," which meant never. I sat back down, not because they told me to, but because the speech that mattered could not be given under their lights. Tyler's friend leaned over and whispered, "No hard feelings, right?" I smiled in a way that didn't invite more words. After dessert, I slipped onto the balcony with Tyler's best man, who was trying to smoke a cigar in the wind. "You're chill," he said. "My dad would have made a scene." Scenes cost, I said. Bills arrive after. He laughed, not getting it, and offered the cigar like a prize. I waved it away. The city lights made the room feel bigger than our lives, and people started saying things they didn't believe. Ethan told a table how he and Lindsay would be a power couple. Marilyn told another that family is a feeling. The manager handed me a revised invoice with additional guests scribbled in the margin. I initialed it and tipped well because staff remember kindness longer than speeches. Inside, someone cheered when the neon sign lit again. It buzzed louder this time. When we returned to the church for a final walkthrough, the pastor paused us at the aisle. "Remember what this is," he said, looking only at Lindsay and Ethan. "It's a promise made in front of witnesses." His eyes flicked to me for half a second, and something settled. I wasn't a sponsor. I wasn't an extra. I was a witness, and witnesses have duties when truth gets rewritten. The pianist started again, and we moved half-speed down the tape lines. Lindsay brushed past me on a turn and whispered, "Dad, please don't be upset." "I'm not," I whispered back. "I'm awake." She didn't know what that meant yet, and I didn't explain. Teachers don't cram on test day. They set the room and let the test work. Afterward, Tyler clapped me on the shoulder as if I were a lucky mascot. "Tomorrow's going to be perfect," he said, "if we keep it tight." I nodded because nodding costs less than a conversation with an audience. Marilyn handed me 2 programs to carry like a chore for a person who needed chores. I took them and walked to the back row where the acoustics were honest. Tyler trailed me for a step. "You're good back there, right?" he asked. "Perfect. Sightlines." "Perfect," I said. He smiled, relieved, and jogged to the front. I looked up at the rafters and found the speaker cluster. The tiny red light near the soundboard winked. "Perfect," I repeated, and finally meant something different than they did. The photographer arrived with 2 assistants, a step stool, and a script. She smiled like a flight attendant and called out groups with brisk confidence. Bride with mom, bride with bridesmaids, groom's family. I stood by the door with my jacket open and my hands plain. Marilyn guided the photographer's elbow like a traffic cop. "Keep the background clean," she said. "No clutter." I was the clutter. Lindsay glanced at me, then away, and the nod I received was more apology than invitation. Tyler saw the tension and hustled over with the practiced grin peacemakers wear. "We'll get a candid later, Mark," he said. "More natural that way." Natural means forgettable when you translate it into albums. I swallowed that truth and kept my face steady. The first setup took place under an arch of rented flowers. "Bride and mother," the photographer called, lifting the camera. Lindsay moved into position. Marilyn floated beside her like she owned light. The shutter clicked fast, 6 frames, then a reset. "Add groom," the photographer said. Ethan stepped in, and the compliments flowed like syrup. "Beautiful," Marilyn murmured. "Elevated," the planner echoed, checking her timeline. The photographer turned her head toward the crowd. "Any other immediate family?" she asked. Tyler started to point at me, then hesitated when Marilyn touched his wrist. "We're keeping it streamlined," she said. The photographer nodded and lowered the camera half an inch. Streamlined is a nice word for edited. I stayed near the door and counted breaths until they made sense again. Counting has saved me from worse moments than this. A bridesmaid with kind eyes drifted over and tried to hand me a boutonniere. "For the fathers," she said gently. There was only one father at that arch. "Thank you," I said, pinning it without comment. The pin caught my skin, small and sharp, and focused my thoughts. Tyler came back with a whisper that tried to help and failed. "It's just for flow," he said. "We'll circle back." "Pictures aren't rivers," I said. "They're doors." He frowned. "I'll talk to Marilyn." "Don't," I said. "Talk to your bride." He looked at Lindsay, saw her smile wobble, and lost his nerve. He squeezed my shoulder, then left it alone. I appreciated that. Cheap comfort is worse than the wrong photo. The photographer began issuing numbers like a drill sergeant. 1, 2, stack, 3, 4, stagger, balconies up. Assistants fanned out with reflectors. The planner tightened the schedule and borrowed authority from a clipboard. "We need to move," she said. "Light is money." Marilyn heard that sentence and smiled like it was written for her. She floated another instruction in the same sweet tone. "Let's keep the back clear of extras," she said. Extras is a word that should never sit near father. The photographer nodded, intent on her frame, not our story. The groomsmen tried a joke about VIP zones and got a chuckle from Ethan. Lindsay's mouth stayed a straight line for 3 seconds. I remembered that line from middle school when she'd try not to cry before spelling bees. I wanted to fix it. I didn't. The one chance came fast and without fanfare. "Bride and parent," the photographer announced suddenly, eyes on her list. Lindsay turned left to find me like a compass finding north. Marilyn cut in with timing a choreographer would envy. "We did that with me," she said. The photographer blinked and checked the page. "You're right," she answered. Moving on. This wasn't cruelty. It was momentum. That almost hurts more. Tyler slipped behind the group and murmured, "We'll grab something at cocktail hour." "If the schedule has room," I said. He looked at the planner and saw there was no room. He opened his mouth and then closed it around responsibility. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be," I replied. "Just notice." He nodded like a student who finally heard the assignment. A small cousin tugged my sleeve and handed me a disposable camera. "Can you take mine?" she asked. I crouched, framed her crooked grin, and clicked. The flash popped and left a ghost in my vision that faded into resolve. Photographs are proof. Proof is a choice. If I couldn't live inside their frame, I could at least live with my choices. Tyler returned again, more earnest now. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm steady," I said. "Steady saves days." He exhaled. "Marilyn means well." "Intentions don't appear in albums," I said. He winced because the line was true and he knew it. He looked toward Lindsay and finally walked to her instead of around her. That mattered more than any bouquet shape. The planner called 5-minute warning for the ceremony. The photographer checked her battery and fired a test. "Any last must-haves?" she asked. Marilyn raised a hand and added Ethan's boss to a family shot. The photographer obliged. Lindsay didn't argue, which told me she was conserving strength. Tyler tried to borrow courage from movement. He walked back over to me and squared himself. "Thank you for staying calm," he said. "I'm learning." "Learning is cheaper than regrets," I said. "You can still make a different choice before vows." He looked at me, then past me, then back at me. "I'll try," he said, which is often the best sentence a young man has ready. We formed up beside the doors in 2 lines that looked like order and felt like a truce. The string trio shifted to the processional. A light breeze tapped the programs on chairs like a reminder that air still exists without permission. Marilyn checked lipstick and said, "Perfect. To no one and everyone." Lindsay touched her bouquet and looked for me again. I gave her the nod that said I was here and was not fragile. She drew strength from that, even if she didn't admit it. The photographer lifted the camera for one last pre-ceremony frame. "Everyone breathe," she said. I did. Breath is free, even when pictures aren't. As the doors opened, I stepped back 2 paces on purpose. Back row gives fathers leverage most people never see. It's where exits live and sound carries. Tyler paused at the aisle, glanced at me and mouthed, "Later." I didn't answer. Later had been pushed all week and always found a cliff. Across the room, near the board with sliders and a red light, the sound technician adjusted a dial. He looked like a kid who'd finally been handed a real job. I filed that away without touching it. This chapter belonged to the lens. The next one might belong to the mic. The back row feels like a loading dock with better chairs. From there, you see arrivals before anyone else recognizes faces. I watched old neighbors adjust ties and whisper about parking, then settle once the strings found their lane. The aisle looked longer from back here, clean and honest, without a spotlight craving attention. Marilyn floated like set decor near the front, managing corners with eyelids and a whisper. Tyler stood square but kept checking the room like it might grade him. Lindsay waited behind the doors, a white hinge between 2 families that thought they were the door. I counted breaths to 4, then to 6, until my chest matched the music. Back row offers restraint because you're not asked to perform it. It also offers a reminder that people who clap loudest aren't always the ones who paid the invoice. An usher slid into the seat beside me, young and too eager for good shoes. "Sir, would you like to move closer?" he asked, voice hushed but hopeful. "I'm good here," I said, keeping it kind and even. He nodded like I'd taught him something and scanned the aisle for trouble that wouldn't come. A cousin behind me whispered, "Is that her dad?" And another whispered back, "I think he's staff." I let it pass because correcting whispers costs more than it returns. A server slipped by with water and smiled at me like we shared a secret. "Best view in the house," she said quietly. "Best exits too," I answered. The sound tech across the room adjusted a fader and checked the red light with reverence. He had the careful posture of kids who finally get to touch the important buttons. I filed that away like a teacher files a good student's name. When the doors opened, the hush came on its own, not because anyone demanded it. Lindsay stepped into light with a face that chose calm over pretty, which is rarer and stronger. Ethan remembered to breathe and looked 10 degrees better, as men do when a real thing enters the room. The Maur, efficient, didn't lean on drama. He trusted ribs and air to carry words. "We gather as witnesses," he said, and I felt the word land where sponsors never stand. The vows fit the space because nothing tried to outshine them. A toddler chirped once and was comforted by a patient hand that didn't make a scene. I felt the back row chair support my spine like an old friend who knows when not to talk. The trio held the edges of silence clean, then let it go when it needed to. That's how good structure works. Present, then invisible. During the exchange of rings, a groomsman fumbled a pocket and laughed too loud, then caught himself. People are teachable when the room is steady. The kiss landed with real applause, not the kind that checks for cameras. Guests turned to recess out, row by row, and I stayed seated until the grandparents passed, like my father taught me. Tyler glanced my way and gave a small nod that admitted the obvious. The day had survived, without edit. Marilyn avoided my eyes, because looking would concede ground she wasn't ready to cede. Lindsay looked back over her shoulder for half a second and found me. I answered with the same nod I'd used since science fairs and scrimmages. Steady, unflashy, complete. Then I stood, waited for space, and followed the flow into the hallway where noise returns and small decisions grow legs. Back row had done its job. The next part belonged to microphones and schedules. Cocktail hour turned the garden into a low hum, which is the correct volume for relief. I stood near the hedges and watched people balance tiny plates and big opinions. A bridesmaid drifted over with a practiced grin. "Your daughter looked beautiful," she said. "She looked clear," I answered. "That's harder." She considered that, then nodded and left before the compliment got sticky. Tyler's best man approached with 2 drinks and a half apology. "I didn't know they cut your speech," he said. "They cut time," I said. "Time cuts everything else by itself." He winced. "You going to try at the reception?" "If they ask," I said. "If they don't," he pressed. "I'll respect the program," I said, which was true and also incomplete. He handed me a club soda, realized I wasn't taking the whiskey, and retreated toward noise that would forgive him for missing the point. Inside, the reception room waited with its own math. The DJ tested levels, calling numbers the room ignored. The room will care later when numbers become feeling. The sound tech checked the wireless mic and did the standard routine. Power on, power off, tap test, cautionary look. I walked past him like I was heading to the restroom and paused just long enough to read his lanyard. He glanced up, ready to be helpful. "You running the board?" I asked. "Yes, sir," he said, straightening. "Program says best man, maid of honor, then groom's mother for remark." "No father?" I asked. "Not on my sheet," he said, nervous he'd missed something. "You didn't miss it," I said. "We'll be fine." He nodded, relieved and unsettled in equal measure. I left him to his sliders and returned to the edge of the room where teachers stand when they want to see learning happen without touching it. During the first round of tray passes, Marilyn shifted chairs like she still owned the air. "Let's center the boss near the head table," she told the planner, who smiled and didn't move a thing. Ethan checked his watch and practiced his entrance stance near the double doors. Lindsay adjusted her bouquet, then handed it to a cousin without ceremony, like someone finally tired of props. I took the back table near the service door because that's where staff circulate and truth collects. The server from earlier set down water and whispered, "They cut your toast?" "They cut room," I said. She frowned like a person who understands fairness, because hospitality depends on it. "Dessert comes around 9, she said. "That's when people listen for real things." "Good to know," I said. She moved on and saved someone else's night. The DJ called for seating with a tone that asks, not orders. Guests shuffled, checked phones, and settled. The planner lifted a hand, then pointed at the head table. The lights dipped just a little, not for drama, but so faces would soften and eyes would stop counting decoration. I felt the shape of the evening click into its tracks. Entrances, salad, toasts, first dance, cake. The spot where my words would have lived was now a blank space the program would sprint past. I didn't need a microphone to know that. I needed one to fix something else. Back row had given me sight lines and exits. The rest of the job would ask for timing and a lever. Lessons land when the room is ready, not when a calendar says they should. The back row taught me what I needed. The mic would decide what the room deserved. The DJ did his cheerful patter and lined up the toasts like planes. Best man first, maid of honor next, then Marilyn for remark. My name wasn't on the card, but the planner had emailed me a slot last month. I watched the clock and the salads and the server traffic. Timing tells truth faster than people do. The best man kept it clean and short, which helped the room breathe. The maid of honor cried twice, then landed her joke right on cue. Applause moved like a ripple and then settled. The DJ checked his list and leaned toward Marilyn with an open palm. Marilyn rose slowly like she expected a spotlight to find her on its own. She held the mic near her chin and smiled toward money first, then family. We're keeping things tight, she said, eyes sweeping the room. So, I'll be brief. She thanked vendors by name and credited Ethan's boss for mentorship. She ended with one sentence that closed a door. We'll move straight to the first dance to stay on our timeline. The DJ looked at his notes and then at me, half confused. The planner took a step, then stopped, because stepping wouldn't change a decision already made at a smaller table. Lindsay stared down into her glass like it could give her a map. I folded my napkin and kept my hand still. The DJ, eager to be helpful, leaned to my ear with apology. We can squeeze you after the cake, he whispered. If they want it. We respect the program, I said softly. He nodded and faded into lights that forgave him. Tyler came around the head table, studied my face, and tried to save. We'll do it later, Mark, he said, candid and heartfelt. Later is a cliff, I replied. He winced because he knew that line was right. I'm sorry, he added. I thought it was set. It was, I said. Someone moved it. He looked at Marilyn and then away, like a man choosing peace over accuracy. I let him keep the choice because fights are heavy, and the dance was next. The band eased into the first dance, and people softened for a minute. Lindsay rested her head just long enough to remind herself of the promise. Ethan forgot the cameras and held her like a person, not a trophy. Marilyn stood with her phone angled for stories and angles. The planner kept time with 2 fingers and a 1,000-yard stare. I watched the sound tech checking levels with a focus I recognized. He tapped the wireless receiver, frowned slightly, and adjusted a gain knob. He wasn't sloppy. He was serious. That mattered more than whether I had a speech. Serious people can carry small secrets without dropping them. Tyler's best man drifted over with a shrug. Tight show, he said. Tight shows Miss Hart, I replied. He didn't argue because the dance ended right then. The DJ launched the parent dances, skipping my name like it never existed. Marilyn took a graceful bow with Ethan, and the crowd clapped on autopilot. Lindsay glanced toward me once, unsure if I'd rise anyway. I stayed seated and gave her the same nod I'd used before every exam and audition. You're okay. I'm okay. Keep going. A cousin behind me whispered, Isn't there a father dance? Another answered, Program must be modern. Modern is a word people use when they forget who paid. The server who liked rules passed with water and paused just a beat. You good? She asked. I'm steady, I said. Steady beats, invited. Invited can be withdrawn. Steady stays when rooms wobble. Cake came early because Marilyn said energy, and the staff obeyed. The knife looked heavy, the frosting looked expensive, and the moment looked rehearsed. The DJ lifted the mic to cue speeches, then caught Marilyn's head shake. He pivoted into open dance like a pro. Lindsay laughed at frosting on her wrist, and then saw me watching. Guilt flashed, then vanished under duty. Tyler mouthed later, and I gave him a small thumbs up so he could keep moving. Tyler's best man tugged my elbow. You sure you don't want to grab it now? He asked. Wrong time, I said. Wrong shape. He blinked. What's the right shape? When truth can land and live, I said. He nodded like he might remember that some other day. I stood near the service door and watched the floor fill. People tried their favorite moves and forgot for a while. The sound tech slid a fader and checked the wireless again. I stepped closer during a loud chorus so we could talk under noise. Mic channel 1 is the handheld, he said, unprompted, like he wanted to prove his craft. Channel 2 is the officiant, just in case. I nodded like a man learning something new. You keep recordings? I asked. Board mixed to a card, he said, tapping a small slot. Backup in case of disputes. Smart, I said. He smiled the way good students smile when a teacher recognizes effort. I like clean mixes, he added. So do I said, meaning more than sound. Marilyn worked the room like a host on a clock. She put important people in important places and called that love. The planner checked the list and crossed items off without flinching. Tyler tried to be everywhere and kept forgetting to be with his wife. Lindsay danced with cousins and kept finding reasons to look my way. I didn't make her choose between embarrassment and loyalty. I stayed quiet and kept measuring. Teachers learn the room before they change it. The toast that never came was no longer the point. The point was whether the lesson would land in a way anyone could keep. The room hadn't been ready at salad, or during cake, or between dances. But rooms change as the night wears down and people settle. The right moment was coming, and the mic already knew my name, even if the program didn't. I waited until the room hit that reliable dip after the first dance. People had plates, not opinions. The band shifted to background mode, which gives sentences room to land. I walked to the sound table like a man checking exits. The tech looked up, eager to be useful. Levels okay? He asked. Clean, I said. I need a housekeeping moment later. 60 seconds. He checked the program and bit his lip. Not on my sheet. It's not a toast, I said. It's thanks. He thought about lawsuits and timelines like a kid who likes rules. Coffee service lull? He asked. Perfect, I said. Channel 1. 1 minute. No hype? I found the planner near the service door, counting plates. Quick request, I said. Housekeeping thank you before coffee. She weighed the room like professionals do. No toasts, she said. Not a toast, I replied. It's to protect staff and close tabs. She smiled because that sentence lives in her world. 60 seconds only, she said. We cannot slip the schedule. We won't, I said. She sighed, then nodded. I'll cue the DJ between cake plates and coffee pour, she said. Keep it exact. Exact is my language, I answered. She moved on, trusting I would act like a grown-up who understands time. Marilyn intercepted me with a polite trap. We're moving fast, she said. No room for extras. It's housekeeping, I said. Good hosts close loops. She searched my face for heat and found none. Don't make this about you, she warned. It's about ending well, I said. She leaned closer. We have the montage cued. Montage plays better after people feel considered, I replied. She held my eyes, then chose to harvest compliments somewhere else. Tyler drifted over. Reading wins. You okay? He asked. I'm going to thank the staff for carrying the day, I said. He nodded slowly, relieved. Good, he said. They earned it. He didn't know what else people had earned. I circled back to the tech and handed him a small card. On it, I'd written 3 lines like a checklist. Q, planner nod, it said. Mike, channel 1, normal gain. Length, 60 seconds. He grinned because someone spoke his dialect. I'll roll a board mix, he said. Clean file if anyone argues later. You're a good man, I said. I like neat endings. He tapped the card slot. Backups are cheap, he said. Mistakes aren't. The DJ joined us and read the note. Housekeeping shout before coffee, he said. No speeches. No speeches, I promised. He pointed at the mic like a baton. When I hand this to you, breathe first, he said. Most people forget air. I won't, I said. Teachers remember air. Coffee service started its soft march. Saucers, creamers, low voices finding chairs again. The planner gave the smallest nod. The DJ faded the music a hair and lifted his smile. Quick housekeeping before coffee, he said. A word of thanks. Heads turned, not all at once. I stood at the service door because that's where the help lives. The mic felt warm from other hands. It always does. I looked at staff first, not the head table. Thank you to the people who carried tonight, I said. Servers, cooks, band, board. The room clapped because kindness has an easy rhythm. Marilyn relaxed by an inch. She thought we were done. We were not done. I kept my voice level and my sentences short. I'm Mark, I said. Father, payer of deposits, watcher from the back. Small laughs, not hostile. I was asked to stay out of frames today, I continued. I did. Frames matter. Heads shifted. People listened harder. But vows matter more than frames, I said. Respect matters more than optics, and truth matters most of all. I paused one beat to let math catch up. I didn't get a toast earlier, I said. Plain, kind, exact. So I'm using my 60 seconds to give 2 thanks and 1 promise. The tech's eyes stayed on the meter. The planner watched the clock. The room held. Thanks, 1, I said. To Lindsay, who grew from hand-me-downs and kept her heart. You looked clear today, not just pretty. Lindsay's eyes found mine and stayed. Thanks, 2, I said. To Ethan, who can choose being a husband over being a brand. That choice shows up in grocery lists more than photographs. A few men nodded without knowing they had. Here's the promise, I said. My money built a room. You decide if love fills it. If you forget, I'll remind you quietly from the back. Every time. Back rows have long memories and good sight lines. I looked at staff again. And once you see a father standing by a service door, don't call him extra. Call him witness. I handed the mic to the DJ on the beat. 60 seconds lived. Exactly 60. The room didn't cheer loud. It exhaled. That's better. Marilyn stood very still, calculating outcomes. Tyler blinked like someone stepping into shade after too much light. Lindsay pressed her lips together, then smiled the right kind of smile. The planner checked her watch and nodded once, on time. The DJ slid the fader and brought the song back like nothing had happened. But something had. The tech tapped his card and labeled a file with tidy letters. Housekeeping, he muttered. Pleased. Servers moved again, lighter by a pound. Some guests wiped their eyes without admitting it. The montage waited a minute longer, and no one died. Sometimes the kindest revenge is truth delivered at room temperature, within the schedule, into a mic that remembers what it heard. Coffee cups clicked like metronomes, and the room settled into listening mode. People didn't return to loud right away. They stayed in the pocket I'd opened. The DJ slid a softer track under the clatter so voices wouldn't try to shout. Servers moved easier because gratitude removes a weight guests never see. Marilyn stood at the head table and arranged her napkin like a chess piece. She didn't glare. She recalculated, which is scarier when you know her. Tyler watched me like he was choosing a road with fewer ditches. Lindsay looked steady, which was the point, because steady survives tomorrow. The planner checked her watch and confirmed we'd honored the minute. The sound tech labeled his file again, neat, like a student who loves order. A man from Ethan's office came by first with a handshake that didn't expect one back. "Good words," he said, eyes kinder than before. Felt right. I kept it simple and didn't harvest anything from it. "Thanks for listening," I said. A cousin added, "Wish my dad had said that at mine," then laughed at his own admission. The server, who'd liked rules, refilled water and said, "Most folks only thank the air." "Air needs help to carry," I replied. Tyler's best man sidled up, half grin, half apology. "Housekeeping, huh?" he said. "Cleanest punch I've seen." "It wasn't a punch," I answered. "It was a level." He nodded like someone finally understood a tool he'd seen in garages. Marilyn approached next with a social smile, borrowed from magazine spreads. "Lovely sentiment," she said, smoothing her dress into obedience. "Just unexpected." "Unexpected keeps people awake," I said. "Awake keeps promises honest." She lowered her voice so cameras wouldn't earn a clip. "You embarrassed her," she said. I shook my head slowly so the line would land. "I respected her," I said. "I made space for vows to matter." She tried a pivot. "You could have asked me first." "I asked the clock," I said. "It said 60 seconds, then move." She studied me like she was shopping for a weak seam. Finding none, she retreated to rework her montage pitch with fewer adjectives. Lindsay reached me before Tyler did. Small steps, bouquet forgotten on a chair. "Thank you," she said, voice clear, not hiding behind the dress, "for not making it a fight." "Fights eat days," I said. "I like days to feed people." She searched my face for anger, didn't find it, and relaxed another inch. "I shouldn't have pushed you back," she confessed, eyes wet but steady. "I got scared of looking small." "Small isn't the danger," I said. "Hollow is." She nodded like a student who finally understood the test wasn't the worksheet. "I want the right kind of memory," she said. "You just bought it for us." I didn't correct the verb. She had paid plenty in worry already. I squeezed her hand once, the old signal for "you're okay. Keep going." Tyler came next. Without the grin he used as armor. He looked like a man who'd finally read the syllabus and found his name on every line. "You got me," he said. Not defensive, not small. "I thought branding would carry us." "Branding is paint," I said. "Marriage is structure." He winced, and then accepted it, because the room offered no applause for denial. "I'm sorry about the dance," he added, glancing at the floor like a kid. "I should have said something." "Say it later," I said. "Say it early next time." He nodded. "I can do early," he said quietly. "I'll start now." He turned, found the DJ, and whispered. The track changed to something slower without fanfare. He held out a hand to Lindsay and gestured toward the open floor like a person, not a host. We took our place after them. No announcements, no spotlight, just space opening because people understood. Lindsay put her cheek against my shoulder like she used to when sleep came hard. The song didn't matter. Timing did. The back row watched, and I felt their attention like warm air, not heat. A cousin's phone stayed down because witnessing outranked posting for once. Marilyn sat, rigid, then softened because resistance had nowhere to land. Tyler's best man raised his glass halfway, remembered the schedule, and set it down instead. The sound tech took a tiny step back from his board, as if not to touch a moment he hadn't mixed. We moved slow and honest. 2 beats of apology, 2 beats of blessing. Repeat. The dance ended before anyone tried to clap first, which is how you know the room finally understood proportion. When we returned to our seats, the planner met my eyes and made a small square with her fingers. It meant you kept it inside the box. I gave her a nod because respect pays crews better than tips. The DJ cued the montage with less hype and more care. It played like a memory, not a commercial, which is all I ever ask from screens. My wife's face appeared again, uncropped this time, and the air changed by a degree. Lindsay squeezed Ethan's hand, then looked at me the way people look at a porch light after a long drive. Not rescued, just home. Guests watched without narrating. That's rare and worth noticing. When the slideshow ended, the room clapped like neighbors again. After dessert, small lines formed that didn't feel like tribunals. An aunt said, "Your 60 seconds fixed my whole week," and I believed her. A teenager asked, "Was that scary?" And I told him the truth. Scary is loud. This was careful. The pastor shook my hand and said, "Witnesses protect vows when families forget how," which is exactly his job description in different words. The caterer passed with coffee and whispered, "Thank you for pronouncing cooks. It matters." "Names always matter," I said. The server who'd kept me hydrated said, "You're why I still like Saturdays," which is the nicest compliment hospitality gives. I pocketed it like a coin I planned to keep. Marilyn tried one more time, softer now because soft lands better late. "I wanted it elegant," she said. "You made it honest." "Honest ages well," I said. "Elegance gets dusty." She breathed out and let a stubborn thought leave the room. "We can do both," she said, "if we start sooner." "Start with respect," I said. "Everything else fits around it." She nodded once, a real nod, and turned her energy into moving chairs for grandparents. That choice meant more than any speech she'd considered. The night ended on time, which is a kind of mercy. People hugged without oversharing and left without dragging their goodbyes. Lindsay found me by the service door and tucked her head under my chin for one breath. "Back row isn't exile," she said. "It's ballast. Ballast keeps ships upright," I said. "It isn't glamorous," she smiled. "I don't need glamorous," she said. "I need steady." Tyler joined us and didn't try to fix the sentence. "We'll come by tomorrow," he said. "No agenda." "Bring coffee," I said. "We'll build something boring." He laughed because boring had finally become a good word. The tech waved from his board, holding up the tiny card like a trophy. "Got the file," he mouthed. "Good," I mouthed back. "Keep it neat." As guests trickled out, the last song played at a human volume, and the lights rose just enough for shoes to find home. I stood a minute longer in the doorway, where staff wheel truth in and roll pretense out. 60 seconds had rerouted an evening without breaking it. The speech everyone heard wasn't a performance, it was a correction. Corrections are mercy when they arrive quietly and on time. I hung the boutonniere on a chair back, thanked the server again, and found the night air right where I left it. Free, simple, and large enough to hold us all. Morning light made the kitchen look honest. I brewed coffee and let quiet clear last night's noise. My phone buzzed with messages that sounded brave at dawn. "Powerful words," an aunt wrote. "You stole the show," a cousin added. I answered none because praise stretches truth if you let it. Tyler's text arrived next. "Can we come by at 10? It read. I typed, "Yes, back door," and left it simple. I set out 3 mugs and a box of plain donuts. Plain keeps conversations from chasing frosting. They arrived on time, which told me they were ready to be adults. Lindsay hugged me without formalities, kept her arms around me 1 second longer. "Thank you for yesterday," she said quietly. "You gave it back to her." "You gave it to yourselves," I said. "I only moved air." Tyler stood behind her like a man who chose to be present. "I'm sorry," he said. "I let the program shrink you." "Programs shrink everything when no one guards the edges," I replied. He nodded and poured coffee like a student who wanted to pass. We sat at the table where homework used to cover half the surface. Grown children look different sitting in their old chairs. They carry real weight, and the wood answers back. Lindsay spoke first and did not chase excuses. "I asked you to stay in the back," she said. "I meant it for photos." It became everything. "Layouts have gravity," I answered. "They pull choices toward them." She took that in and didn't argue. Tyler added, "I should have said your name during toasts. I should have asked the planner to fix it." "Early is cheaper," I said. "Late costs pride." He nodded again, a little embarrassed and a little wiser. Lindsay placed a folded note on the table. "I wrote this before the ceremony," she said. "It was supposed to be your card." I read it while they watched, and the lines were simple and right. "You taught me to stand still. I forgot yesterday. Please hold me steady." I kept the paper in the quiet. Marilyn called next, which we all expected. I put her on speaker because rooms teach better than halls. "Mark," she began, "I owe you an apology." She sounded careful, not coached. "I managed the day like a show and forgot the cast." "We all forgot in pieces," I said. The mic reminded us. She exhaled. "I was angry last night," she admitted. "It felt like you aimed at me." "I aimed at respect," I said. "It stands where anyone builds it." Lindsay stepped closer to the phone. "Mom, I asked Dad to sit in the back," she said. "That started it." Marilyn paused, letting her daughter carry a share. "Then we all fix it," she said. "Starting with Thanksgiving at your place, not mine." Tyler smiled at that because small changes carry far. After the call, Tyler studied the mug rim like numbers lived there. "What about the montage?" he asked, almost joking, almost checking. "It landed softer," I said, "which means it will last longer." He laughed once and wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand. "I learned more in 60 seconds than in 6 months of posts," he said. Lindsay touched his sleeve. "We're retiring the neon sign," she added. "It buzzes like a lie." "Donate it to a drama club," I suggested. They turn buzz into art. She grinned. The first easy one of the morning. Tyler finished his coffee and cleared the cups without being asked. Small chores are apologies that don't need captions. The sound tech texted a link mid-morning. Board mix, housekeeping.wav, the label read. He wrote, keep if useful, delete if peace is better. I wrote back, you run a clean ship, and left it at that. Lindsay asked to hear it. I shook my head. Memory is stronger than playback, I said. Keep the feeling, not the file. She accepted that without a fight, which told me the lesson had found the right shelf. Tyler asked if I wanted a formal father-daughter photo taken today. Porch light and real shirts, he said. No arch, no theme. Yes, I said. By the maple at 4. He nodded and put it on his calendar without inviting an audience. By noon, messages shifted from noise to real. The pastor wrote, witness heard. The planner sent, thank you for staying inside the box. Owen from the venue emailed a simple note. Order held. The server who liked rules wrote, my feet hurt less when people say thank you. I answered that one. You carried the night, I typed. Sleep hard. Marilyn sent a short text. I was wrong. I'm sorry. And then did not add a paragraph. Growth looks like fewer words sometimes. A cousin tried to stir gossip with, family drama. Am I right? I deleted the draft reply because drama wants gas. It hates water. We met for the porch photo late afternoon. The light did the work, and the picture felt like ours. Lindsay joked about my boutonniere hanging on a chair back like a retired uniform. You kept it neat, she said. Even your silence was tidy. Silence is a tool, I said. It cuts clean when sharpened. Tyler set the timer, jogged into frame, and didn't ask for a second take. The print came out on their field camera with edges that didn't lie. No one filtered it. No one needed to. They left before dinner because young couples should practice leaving clean. At the door, Lindsay touched my sleeve. Back row? Ostam isn't forever, she said. But it's where I want you when I forget myself. I'll be there, I said. That's the job. That night, I walked to the church and stood under the rafters where the red light had winked. The hall was empty except for folding chairs stacked like sleeping soldiers. I sat in the back and let the quiet check my work. No triumph rose. That's a good sign. What settled was relief that respect had been renamed and returned to the right shelf. Revenge had looked like a speech on paper. It turned into a calibration. Calibrations don't trend. They hold. I stood, touched the chair where I'd sat, and thanked the room out loud because rooms remember tone even when people forget words. Then I went home and slept like a man who finally put the right wrench back in the drawer. The next morning brought one last knock. Ethan's boss stood on my porch with a serious face. I owe you a thanks, he said. Most of my guys grow up slower. We all grow in public sometimes, I said. He nodded. You did it gentle, he added. Gentle holds. He left without asking for coffee, which I respected. The house felt steady again. The back row had earned its keep. The microphone had done its entire job. All that remained was a letter that had to say one simple thing and then quit. I wrote the letter at the kitchen table with a quiet pen. It fit on one page because love gets weaker when it rambles. I kept the tone calm, the way good instructions read. I am your father, not your sponsor, the first line said. The next line promised presence without performance. You will always find me steady, even from the back row. I added a rule that saves families more than speeches. Call me for safety, not sparkle. I will always show up. I closed with the sentence teachers use when class finally understands. Respect is the grade. Everything else is extra credit. I signed my name the way I did on permission slips and science fair forms. At noon, I drove the letter to their apartment instead of sending it. Lindsay opened the door wearing a sweatshirt and relief. Tyler stood behind her with 2 mugs and a careful face. I held out the envelope like a tool, not a gift. For later, I said. Read it when the house is quiet. Lindsay pressed it to her chest and nodded. Stay for 10? She asked. 10 is perfect, I said. Tyler cleared a spot at the table like a student ready to listen. Yesterday changed me, he said, simple and correct. I kept my reply, even so it would stay true. Keep the change boring, I said. Boring lasts. I pulled a small box from my jacket and set it down. Inside sat a copy of the porch photo and a folded index card. Lindsay lifted the photo and smiled the right way. We look like us, she said. The card held 3 lines written in thick marker. Separate accounts. 1 joint. Pause rule, it read. Tyler laughed once because the joke was really a map. This is our seatbelt, he said. Seatbelts feel tight until they save you, I replied. Lindsay traced the lines and didn't correct a thing. We'll tape it inside the pantry, she said. I handed Tyler a small level from my toolbox and watched him weigh it. "For shelves," I said, "and days." They read the letter before I could leave, because courage likes daylight. Lindsay leaned against the counter and read aloud, without wobbling. When she reached safety, not sparkle, she looked up and met my eyes. "You were always that," she said. "I forgot." Tyler took the page and read the last paragraph twice. "Respect is the grade," he repeated, as if learning a formula. "It's simple," I said. "Simple early beats complicated late." He nodded, then asked the one question that measures a man. "How do I do better before it costs?" "Name the people you're trying to impress," I said. "Then pick one. Your wife." I had one more small thing. Not expensive, just heavy in the right way. "These are copies of receipts for staff tips I covered," I said. "Only so you know what gratitude costs." Tyler studied the numbers without flinching. "We'll take the next round," he said, quietly. Lindsay slid the letter back into the envelope and tucked it under a magnet. "We owe you so much," she said. "You owe me nothing," I answered. "You owe each other steadiness." Tyler exhaled and looked around their place like a builder counting studs. "We'll start with dinner at our table next Sunday," he said. "No centerpiece, real plates." "That's a headline I can read," I said. I stood to go before the moment got heavy and broke. "Walk me to the door," I said. "Then pretend I forgot my hat when you need 10 more minutes." Lindsay smiled because she understood the gift inside the joke. At the threshold, she brushed my sleeve and kept her hand there. "Back row when I forget," she said softly. "Front row when I remember." "Both rows are yours," I said. Tyler reached for a handshake and pulled me into a quick, dry hug. "Thank you for 60 seconds, he said. "Thank you for the lifetime behind it," I replied. He nodded, a little taller for meaning it. On the drive home, the world looked regular again, in a way I trust. I passed the church and thanked the rafters quietly for holding sound and patience. At the house, I put the binder back on the shelf like a tool that earned rest. I didn't rewrite the past or polish the night. I just let relief fill the space where anger used to audition. The phone stayed face down because quiet deserves the room it bought. In the evening, Tyler texted a photo of the index card taped inside their pantry. Lindsay sent a second one, the level mounted above it, bubble centered. "We're learning to keep things straight," her message read. I believed them because the picture did not lie. Before bed, I stepped outside and looked at the porch light we'd stood under. It wasn't brighter than usual. It was truer. That's what correction does when it lands cleanly. It doesn't make fireworks. It steadies rooms and people. Tomorrow would bring rent, work, and normal arguments that need small tools. When they call, I'll answer with the voice they know. Not a lecture, not a performance. Just a father who remembers his seat and keeps the rails even. If this story felt honest to you, give it a like. Tell me in the comments what it reminded you of. And subscribe if you want more steady, true-to-life stories about respect and accountability.